Such an important and interesting review here today, a full driving review of the all-new Mercedes GLC as the GLC EQ, the electric GLC. How good is it? Is it one of the best SUVs out there at this moment? And how does it relate to the BMW iX3, the main new competitor, because we have driven that one already as well? And how does this one relate to the combustion engine model? What is their plan at Mercedes? Between combustion GLC and electric GLC, we will tell you all about it. And one thing is already clear. The German automotive industry is going full throttle or full accelerator pedal again, now also in the electric segment. And this is definitely one of the most important models in that respect. But how does it relate to also into the trims, exterior, interior, different versions, different colors, everything with Thomas and Autogefühl in 4K, full screen, full length. Let's go with the new GLC, which has this retro front grille inspired by the W108, 109. That was the Mercedes that was preceding the first S-Class, the 116. And I think what I've achieved is that they have this retro grille, which has the same form and outline, but new interpretation with light. These dots are illuminated. This star is illuminated. In the North American market, you also have the illuminated ring around because that's allowed there. It's not allowed in the EU. They would have done that. So they have this mix between retro look and modern look. In this case, I think it's very well done. The original EQ look of their new models was, I think, too artificial and not enough Mercedes-alike. And here the good thing is, when you would not see the logos, you could still see, oh, that's the Mercedes, you know, and that was the goal of it. Here, this is the Avantgarde, the base trim, so to speak, and that has the chrome frame around, bright. You can also get dark chrome, soon showing that to you. In the AMG line, this inner side would be dark chrome as well. And then you can get both dark chrome inside and outside, so we'll show you different versions. But this is the more like classy look. I like this look very much. And also the clear blue color, aka Thomas Blue, because this is one of my favorite blue tones here, definitely. It is a blue color that is really screaming out, yes, I am a blue color. Then headlamps here with the star identity. This is the digital light, matrix LED, where you can see this also has these blue lines on the inside. Then you also know this is a digital light, and also says right here. So then it can also have this extensive high beam function. Then you see extensive power domes here on front of the hood. And talking about the hood, there's a special feature because they have a Frunk here. And here we press the logo just slightly, and then we do this manual release. It's very funny to see, by the way, how they do this manual release and with the cable right there. And you have a significant Frunk, really large, you know, for a cable. There's also nice floor mat in there, for example. These would be then where the splitters for the American market would be put inside, because, yeah, you know, there's the thing that they have this regulation that people don't get the idea that they put people in the front. Yeah, about that. But it's very well usable, pretty cool. And this opening mechanism is also coming very handy. So that's really, really nice. Like that. And you also see that they kept the relatively long front hood for design purposes, for aerodynamics, and here to get a very large frunk as well, because now it's getting very interesting as well as for the dimensions. We are here at 4.85 meters or 191 inches, and that is 30 centimeters, 5 inches longer than the combustion engine GLC. 8 centimeters of that goes into the longer wheelbase, and then 5 centimeters or 2 inches goes into exactly here a longer legroom on the inside. So taking a look at that, then here you can see that they kept this long hood as a core identity of the GLC. 20-inch wheels, 19 to 21 is the range. Here then in the middle, different designs are available. And I have to see, there's one special design in 20-inch which I really love. It's not this one, it's also cool, but there's one new special design which is pretty cool. Let's see if we can find that somehow. In this case here, also the Avantgarde has the classic SUV plastic wheel arches. I mean, why not? And if you're interested in a new one, but rather want to buy a used GLC, maybe a plug-in hybrid or something like that, check out carVertical. There's also a discount code for 20% off in the video description or the pinned comment. And with carVertical, you can check the history of the vehicle, check the correct mileage, if there were any repairs and so on. There's always an extensive report that you can be certain before buying a used car what has happened with the car before, that you don't buy anything unknown and And this is a very helpful tool, definitely, to use that before you purchase this used vehicle.
So use the 20% discount code AUTOGEFÜHL. You'll find it in the video description and the pinned comment. Then you can directly click the link.
And also very special, the entry-level version still has real door handles. Why is that so important? First of all, here you have very good, just normal feedback, and they're easy to open. And to me, also safer, because the higher trim versions have the flush door handles that come out. And they're supposed to be very safe at German manufacturers, but because some other manufacturers didn't implement them that well, there were these incidents in China where they couldn't get the door open in the accident, and now the Chinese market will be, will have them forbidden, these flush door handles. The good thing for Mercedes is they have them, they can just pull them out. Hey, we already have them. At this moment, when you order the GLC very initially, you cannot get them with keyless go. So you always have to take out the key and open the vehicle, pressing on the key fob, and only keyless go in combination with the flush door handles. But I asked Mercedes, customers want keyless go, but also classic door handles. So will you offer that, the combination, classic door handles and keyless entry? And they said, yes, we are also going to offer that. So that's very important info. Classic GLC look here, and I think it's also nice that they didn't make a special electrical look for the GLC now, but they kept it with its true identity indeed. The only thing is, and we see that with all new Mercedes models, let's say not only electric models, but also new upcoming models or facelifts and so on, that they use this black bar here. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of that. I asked the designers, why did you actually do that? And the reason they did that is they wanted to keep the star on the same line here with the lights, and then this star has the flipping logo effect to open the trunk, and also the rear view camera is hidden there, that it's protected against wind, rain and so on. But then they said it has to be in a certain angle, because then the rear view camera has to look down in a specific angle, and so they put it together in this unit that they can put it on the same height, but it still complies with all regulations at how the camera has to look. And the other solution would be that you put it somewhere else in the metal, but then you cannot align the stars so well with the same height of the lamps. This is like one of the explanations for that. Bottom line, I like it better when you see more vehicle color in the rear than the black bar. Or what do you think about it? Nice, I think, again, that they use this, Mercedes structure here with the stars also in the tail lamps, why not? And the Avantgarde has more chrome in the lower part right here, bright design, whereas the AMG line would have high gloss black. And we're soon going to show you an AMG line exterior and also interior later on, that you can also compare that. This is here the GLC 400. And you see, it just says GLC 400 and 4MATIC. And it doesn't say EQ or something like that. And it seems to me that they kind of want to get rid of this naming logic a little bit, and I mean, why not? Just people haven't asked for this. Just call it, like then we say like electric GLC or whatever, And the second vehicle for you to show you the differences. First of all, here in the normal white color, and this is with AMG line. Of course, good contrast to the white color then. AMG line has different graphic here in the lower part in comparison to the Avantgarde. And also the grille here, this is equipped with the night package. So it doesn't automatically come with AMG line, but with the night package, then you have dark chrome here, the outline, and we also have here these black pads here, or these covers then for the side mirrors, and we also have the black outline around the window. So here then AMG line plus the night package for the sportier look overall. For example, also the lower side skirt is then here in the high gloss black. We also have different wheels here. These are 20-inch wheels in this aerodynamic design right here. And you can see that in the rear, you do have talked about this black mask, and then you have even, like this like almost parallel running in a different height than the high gloss black in the lower part. So tell me in the comments if you more like the Avantgarde style, which would be probably my favorite, more classy look. And this would be probably like Leah would design the vehicle. You know, she's all more into the AMG line, more black, or M Sport package, Audi S and so on. But yeah, whatever you prefer actually. And later when we jump to the interior part now, we will also take a look at this very vehicle because this also has then the AMG Line Interior. And whereas we just had the opaline white vehicles, this is the white color, this one here is the Patagonia Red with AMG Line Plus and night package. What does that mean? We have night package, again, the frame outside in dark. AMG Line also makes the inside of the grille dark chrome, but you could also have the AMG Line, of course, with the bright frame outside if you don't go for the night package. So you have some variation that is possible. And you could theoretically also depict this dark chrome on the inside and make it bright on the inside. So yeah, whatever you desire, you can pick it there. And then here with the AMG Line Plus, we have special wheels, the biggest ones, 21-inch in black. In this case, and also here with the side steps, which maybe look negative as for the wind resistance, but they're actually rather helping. And AMG Line Plus here in the rear also has a little bit longer spoiler. So usually it's like this. And then you have this longer spoiler than here in the rear, if you want to have it even more, a little bit dramatic. But then about the facts and figures, because so far there's this new electric GLC and then there will be the combustion engine running parallel. So they will not discontinue the combustion engine and plug-in and diesel and petrol GLC. But at this moment it's also not planned that the current GLC will be completely renovated, you know, like this. And I mean, that's, I think, fine. The current GLC model is also good. And this one is the MB.EA platform. So this is a purely dedicated EV platform. Means this could not house a combustion engine GLC anyway. Then to the EV facts. Here, charging flap is right there. So also electric, 11 kilowatt AC or option 22. And then here you have an official 330 kilowatt DC charging peak. Also closes electric again. It can, however, also reach some higher figures like 350, 355 kilowatts just for a very brief time. Then the charging curves are also dropping quite quickly and you can go from 10 to 80% state of charge in about 22 minutes. And that was also achieved. Could see that, like the concise test of that's working very well. However, it seems that the iX3 charging curve is maintained a little bit more, and that the iX3 charges basically in the same time, or maybe a little bit quicker, but for a larger battery, because the battery here is 94.5 kilowatt hours net, whereas the BMW iX3 has 108.7 kilowatt hours. So a 14 kilowatt hour difference together with CD value differences. Here the GLC is already aerodynamic, but 0.26, whereas the iX3, the lower value is better, is at 0.24. So it seems to be that the iX3 has a bigger battery and also better CD value, and the frontal area is also not a huge difference. Not that this one would have a great advantage there or something. So we can then expect a little bit more range probably from the iX3. We'll do a first range test here today with this one, and we already did with the iX3. And at the end of the video, we are then going to compare it. That seems like, wait a minute, is the iX3 then better? However, here the GLC, the electric one, also has a lot of advantages in itself and unique selling points. For example, acceleration. 4.3 seconds, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour. That sounds like a pure AMG model, whereas it is not. I mean, if this one will get an AMG model, like what's the acceleration is going to be about, you know? And why is that possible, whereas the iX3 accelerates in 4.9 seconds? So 0.6 seconds slower than. This one is so quick in the acceleration because it uses a 2-speed gearbox, although it's an electric vehicle. And the first gear will go 0 to 1 kilometers an hour. In the first gear, will hold it, be extremely quickly. But in normal situations, it would already shift up to the second gear at 70 kilometers an hour and use the second gear for motorway driving, higher speed and better efficiency and so on. So we'll see about this effect. And also very important here, we get for this car air suspension and rear axle steering. So here then the rear wheels can turn up to 4.5 degrees in the opposite direction than the front wheels. And together in this package with the air suspension, this is one package. You can get it in this, I think it's called like agility control package, and also in the long range package. So they're both are bound together and supposed to be also available on all markets. And air suspension and rear steering, the iX3 does not have that, whereas the GLC does get this option. Then again, the price goes higher and so on. So you see, there will be different focuses, but definitely super, super interesting. And of course, the interior will be even more interesting. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, I love these classic door handles then. In this case, really gotta say that. And door closing sound. Good door closing sound, very solid. Let's check out the rear. Yeah, solid as well, like that. And I prefer the classic door handles, but yeah, again, the combination then would be better from the door handles, the classic ones, and the keyless go. Inside of the door, here, very soft touch, also with like a soft touch underneath. Like when you press it in, great quality. Also here with the high grade leather red and in beige, different colors are available. And 4 window levers, not 2 like in the CLA. And this one here also gives some feedback, the seat control inside of the doors. However, we did lose the seat heating button there, sadly. Then Burmester sound system, and then here hard pack at the inside of the door, a little bit of rubber pad underneath though. You can also open the trunk or the trunk also from here. That's also possible. Then we have, let's see here, the Avantgarde base steering wheel. AMG-Line would have 2 spokes. We'll soon take a comparing look. This is also the new animal-free material here at the steering wheel. It's a little bit more matte, less greasy basically than the animal skin surface, and it really feels soft. And also, like underneath, you know, when you press it in, it gives like some, you know, underneath they have some dampening basically. This is really good, high quality. Love that. And real buttons here. The rocker and roller, as they call it, for the cruise control and for the volume jog. They have listened to customers, listened to our feedback as well, and returned these real tactile things on the steering wheel. And also here with the recuperation things, with the shifting pedals, for example. Dramatic turbine air vents, and also like how the quality is there, you know, when you turn around like this, really nice. Matte wood here also, birch wood. This beautiful design feels really nice. More to that soon. Different matte wood are available. Then these seats here are the high-grade leatherette seats, the Artico seats. And I tested the animal skin seat as well off camera. And when you press it down here, this one gives a nicer pattern, whereas you have more like, you know, there's like this sort of rinses with the animal skin, and this is a little bit softer. So you have a softer surface here. You gotta say though that the BMW iX3, the leatherette quality, is even softer, even a little bit better. The top part here is the comfort seat. You also have a sport seat, and that would have like a stronger bolstering, so to speak, here in this area, and also the integrated head restraint. This one with a separated head restraint. We'll soon tell you all about the differences. And then here the lower area, however, is supposed to be rather the same as for the seating depth. And let's test the comfort. So this one here, Artico leatherette, seat heating, seat cooling will also be available, not at the very first start configurator day, but later also as a separate option. So seat cooling for the Artico seats available. There is optional animal skin in the configurator, and then the microfiber for the sport seat, soon going to show you. And the German market, for example, will also get base fabric seats, fabric outside, leatherette outside. And I think fabric is an underrated seating material. So especially in the American and the Asian markets, it's often, let's say, it's less quality and so on, but it's actually not. The modern fabric seats are pretty breathable and also very cozy when sitting on them, but usually they're then not offered on all markets. Here, manual, making it longer here, extension, and it's actually nice comfort. So yeah, you can't criticize here anything. The only thing is that the iX3 has a little bit better ergonomics, a wider seat I feel, and a little bit softer from the materials. So here also, once again, the only thing is that there is a competitor that is a little bit better in the seating comfort, but overall great job by Mercedes also introducing this material and showing that you're not losing anything but just gaining from these technologies. And then here, headroom 189, 6'2", a lot of headroom left, fixed glass roof, soon more details to that, and steering wheel here with electric control, in and out, up and down. So yeah, and more to the screen here very soon, but overall you feel that they have once again like stepped up the build quality here. Is really nicely done. And important to show that as well, laminated glass here in the front. And now welcome to the new GLC cockpit. A lot to say about this one here. First of all, this is the highest spec. Then you have this Hyperscreen. This is really one monitor that goes all the way through. And what they have done in a very nice way, gotta admit that. For example, here you have these schemes and then they change the background of the screen, and together also the ambient lighting changes. So then the ambient lighting and the scheme on the background is somewhat similar, and that looks really cool, you know. So it's of course nothing that is really needed, but they really play with the high resolution of these screens here, and it's really elegant solution of adding some more digital value, so to speak. Because the thing is, when you remove buttons and switches and so on, how can you still transport a high-class feeling? And that's why I also say to the manufacturers, you still have to offer buttons and switches that you can still be like a high-class 70s, 80s metal stereo. You know, that's why they still have manual volume jog here, for example. That's why they reintroduced the jogs at the steering wheel as well. The only thing I do not have is the climate unit in a tactile way. So this is then in the screen and actually also pretty tiny overall, gotta say. So this screen that goes all the way through is an option. It would start with two big bezels here and then 1, 2, 3 screens. However, the base passenger side screen, if you haven't picked any package, is just for a background image and it's not a functional passenger screen. Strange that they make the step, right? And then if you go for the first option, for the first package, then you have here a passenger screen. And this is already included, of course, then in the highest Hyperscreen, which has then no bezels at all. You can, for example, watch autographer YouTube videos. We'll also try that while driving later on. It will be quite fun. I'm not watching that. Jonas will watch that, who was filming us today. Then here, also soft touch on the top dashboard, more speakers, ambient lighting integration. And then we have beautiful design of these air vents here, also with clicking sound, more of this birch wood, which looks really cool, and also you can feel it actually and hear how I feel that. Love that. Different matte wood styles are available, and cup holders are somewhat adaptive. However, they will not hold tall bottles tight enough. So I would wish for this 4-dot design they introduced with the Mercedes S-Class recently in the facelift. Underneath this middle console, we have 2 USB-C chargers. There's no way that goes through from the bottom to the top. Maybe that's mounting reason, but there is a big hole underneath here, but it has no connection to the top chargers here, the inductive charging pads, which are also, wait a minute, I think this looks like there's only one, but I think there's also 2 available. Maybe that's an option. You cannot put a cable through like in the CLA or something like that. So I would always prefer the cable charging, but you can freely pick if you want cable or inductive charging. Then you have this split armrest, also soft enough for your elbow. And there's then, yeah, you can place all the clutter then here, or microfiber towel with, for cleaning the screen and so on. Then glove box is here, also smoothly dampened. Oh, this is not covered from the inside here, but here at least, not too spacious though. And about this panoramic roof. So also difference, BMW iX3 gets, if you just want, a fixed roof, and then optional, the fixed glass roof. Neither of them have roofs you can open, and this one has this special effect. So it is a fixed glass roof by standard, and then either you have it clear like this, and then you can go for this option here that you can also change it in a digital way with the PDLC technology. But it doesn't change how much sun it comes here. It's more against maybe a little bit less blinding that way, but the heat protection is always standard in the glass, even if you don't go for this option. And it is a very highly sophisticated technology that really leaves a lot of heat from the sun outside, but still a completely fixed roof with metal would still leave more sun outside, you know, so we have to be aware of that. But I mean, it looks cool, it looks modern, brings light on the interior. Might just be a problem when it's like really, really super, super hot in summer days. Then you should also use the preconditioning function for this vehicle, which also works very, very well. Yeah, what do you think about that? And optional, you could then also go for a star pattern in this panoramic roof that you see like some illuminated tiny stars in there. So you see, it's always the scheme here that a lot is optional, but you'll be also just fine with most of the base functions for sure. And the driver POV, once again here with the real buttons. This one is still capacitive here though, gotta say that. And on the other side, this is also the capacitive control for the instruments, not my favorite, but I'm really happy to have the real jogs back then here. And to the digital instruments, when you have this classic view, then you have the even transition also to the full screen. And here in this map view, for example, then you have like, looks like a separate screen, although it's not a separate screen, you know. So yeah, this, by the way, oh, when the door is not properly closed, there we go, and then it's properly closed. Then you can change something more of the views and also what you want to have in the middle. And this is, by the way, also a realistic consumption at these speeds. First preview on that, and we soon do a motorway trip only with higher average speed, and the consumption will also be a little bit higher. But clear to read everything. You can also get a head-up display. Hard to see in camera, but it's huge with your own eyes indeed. And then the main infotainment screen with the high resolution is also actually decently quick. What's important to me is, yes, not too good to have the temperature only there, but the seat heating is also in the first level. So you can activate that, and then seat heating and steering wheel heating is activated at the same time. If you want to go more deep in the menu, here it's possible, and then you can also deactivate it individually, for example. Not sure how it will be with the seat cooling, if it will also be in the same level. Let's wait for that. And then here, for the EU speed chime law, you press in the top part, you can deactivate it then, or you can also deactivate it with pressing and holding here the volume button right there. And you also have Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, so I'm going to show that to you. And let's test the Burmester sound system. Wow, testing the Burmester sound system here is great. It's awesome sound. It really like goosebump sound, so I can just recommend that. And yeah, intense setting for electronic music and the pure setting for acoustic music. So wow, it's awesome sound really. So yeah, definitely one of my favorite systems. Apple CarPlay integration or Android Auto, there you see that, I mean, you have different backgrounds for your stuff there. And in this case, when you often use Apple CarPlay, this doesn't work that well with the transition of the rest of the system, you know. It's planned to be used by Mercedes graphics only, basically. It's not bad, but there you can see when you use often the Apple CarPlay, then it doesn't make such a big difference. When you then have like the bezels, then you more have like your own separate screen. So I would really say, if you want to use the Mercedes GPS all the time, then maybe go for the Hyperscreen. But when you use Apple CarPlay very often, it's maybe then not so important to go for this Hyperscreen. And also interesting here to take a look at the Mercedes app, nice visualization, and then you can also unlock the vehicle with that. With the keyless go, of course, you can just use your smartphone then as a key. And here, for example, you also have the charging statistic and so on, very important also maybe for taxation and stuff like this. So yeah, that looks pretty good already. And yeah, we have to test it through then maybe if we have the vehicle for a longer period of time than with the keyless go. And now the second interior for today, AMG-Line Interior. First of all here, everything wrapped tight with a leatherette, nice ambient lighting integration, more leatherette here. And this once again here without any cover, this of course in the same rubber pad in the lower part. And then we have AMG-Line floor mats right there with the logo. This is also the AMG steering wheel with 2 spokes actually then in this case. And this is the sport seat. Microfiber on the inside, leatherette on the outside, and the sport seat is especially different here in the back area. So you have this integrated headrest, then you have more shoulder support, and yeah, it's a little bit firmer then, but the lower part shouldn't be the biggest difference. Of course, in here with the microfiber is also a comfortable choice. So yeah, I mean, like from the seating itself is not the biggest difference, but the bigger difference is definitely here in the upper area. So on the one hand, it's maybe a little bit firmer, but it also keeps you tighter a little bit. I mean, it's also a good seating position. I got to think about this. Maybe also then again while driving, which one is the more suitable choice. So yeah, tough choice indeed. But good materials also used. The microfiber is also very nice because you, yeah, so to speak, have a yeah, maybe like a cozier atmosphere. But that's totally a matter of preference. You know, some rather prefer the stick surface. You can clean it easier also on than here the sportier surface, but both work very well. And the cockpit overview, once again here with the screen that goes all the way through, different decor element. It feels matte here, has more like a honeycomb structure, I would say so. That matches a little bit with the aluminum. Not sure if this one would be my favorite, but just to give you like a different design idea and also hear how the AMG line steering wheel looks again. Now the rear doors here, also everything covered with leatherette. That's nice. Well, as the sound system even more, and then hard pack here again, and then to the rear seats. So you have about 5 centimeters or 2 inches more rear legroom in comparison to the GLC combustion engine. So here, so also when I'm driving as a tall person in the front, there's enough legroom left, and yeah, more spacious than in the combustion engine version. Headroom here to the side, a little bit close. And then here in the middle to the glass roof, also plenty of space, no problem. And here in the middle part, by the way, folding this down, then you have either a smartphone holder or some cup holders in there. And the rear comfort is also fairly good. And you see also that although it's an electric vehicle, there's not too much bending, from the angle of the knees here. Advantage for an SUV because they have, more space than in the height. And yeah, it's actually quite cozy here. Why not? You can definitely use it here. 2 USB-C chargers in the middle part, and there's also not much of a middle tunnel here, of course. Yeah, since electric vehicle, one electric motor in the front, one in the rear, then you don't need it in the same way like you would do with a classic combustion engine. And ISOFIX then here on the outsides each. Interesting, this can be like pulled in like this, and then maybe that wasn't a good idea. Yeah, there we go. And let's see from the inclination here. No, that's it. So that's only for folding, but you could fold down this ski hatch here, for example. Trunk or boot at 570 liter, and here we flip the Mercedes star to open it. There we go. Then we have this cover here, which also has rails left and right. This one still fits underneath vertically, barely, but still works. Of course, you could also remove this whole thing. And then the measurements are actually pretty interesting. So, but first of all, here underneath, there's just a little bit of space. Not too much, but for some shallow stuff. However, you can also move this one then in the lower position, and that gives you additional height. First of all, the normal length here is about a little bit longer than 1 meter or 40 inches. So that's already good. And here also the standard width, look at that. This is more like 1 meter is 10 or 43 inches. So that's very good actually. And then when you put it in a lower position, then you are here at almost 31 inches or 78 centimeters. So I like these dimensions indeed. That's pretty good. And if you want to load things through, you can of course put that in the upper position again. There we go. And then here, this cool thing, we have remote unlock for the seats. The BMW iX3 does not have that. Here it is possible. You have to be aware, by the way, sometimes it doesn't work because the seat belts hold tight. So the seat belts always have to be loose for that. And then here we can load through overall 74 inches or a little bit less than 1 meter 90. But overall, I think very good dimensions here. Even the 7th generation. Let's start driving the GLC EQ, electric GLC, and you can see here, Jonas was filming us today here. You can watch the latest YouTube episode right here on the right side. And when I'm driving slowly, it still works. I mean, it's there to be used while being stationary, And then you can see here, instruments goes over into the large infotainment system and then goes over into the passenger screen. And yeah, I mean, that looks super impressive, definitely. But the thing is here, just watch it. When I start driving a little bit quicker, it should also disappear, that it doesn't distract me. See here, 20 kilometers an hour. Oh, did we trick the system actually? Because it should disappear, right? When we were doing like a dry test, it did disappear. So because usually they don't allow that the driver could theoretically still keep watching, but maybe it's because Jonas played so much with the screen. So I don't know. I think that's not supposed to be, and it did disappear in an earlier dry test. So yeah, probably you can trick the system and somehow, I don't know. Yeah, very interesting. So yeah, Jonas can watch the latest episode while I'm recording then the newer one. That's funny, but yeah. Well, I'm not sure if that's maybe distracting to the viewer or so. So yeah, maybe let's do some nice background picture or something like that. Yeah, there we go. Or like this. So we want to try different situations here with the GLC electric, and that is city, countryside driving, also motorway, acceleration of course, and at the end of the episode we're going to talk about the consumption and the concise range, rearward range, and so on. This vehicle here is equipped with 20-inch wheels. Oh, there's like this manhole cover here. Easily done, very smooth. 20-inch wheels, air suspension, and rear axle steering. And this is of course something special if you compare it to the iX3, which has a fantastic base suspension. There, iX3 adaptive suspension later, but no air suspension. Here they go, standard suspension, or then you can directly hop to the air suspension. And this, of course, gives you more flexibility in the ride, so to speak. This is here this augmented reality feature. You don't have to have it, but you could theoretically. That gives me like the Mercedes internal GPS view then with these augmented arrows right there. With the rear axle steering, you're very flexible. Also here in slow slalom, for example, I feel that the rear is then moving a little bit, and just easing the car around when you're driving slowly is, I mean, it's so easily done. Maybe I can show you, just drive straight and I can show that to you when I just turn around here, you know. So doing just the U-turn where it's like, I mean, this is like not a small car, and then here you can turn it around. And so, I mean, then you can watch here in the mirror also sometimes how the rear wheels, here, look at that, augmented reality also with looking underneath and easing this cars around is so easy. And we had that recently also when we were comparing the X3 plug-in hybrid, which we were driving, or which we are driving at this moment, and the GLC, which has the, like a GLC combustion engine, which has the rear axle steering, and getting in and out of the basement garage is just so much easier than with the rear axle steering when you have to, do another maneuver and so on. It's a very silent vehicle, feeling it already in the city. We have the lamination here in the front glass. Not in the rear, but in the front, it's for most cases enough. Bumpy in the road, yeah, that is cool. So the air suspension delivers you a great comfort. Seating-wise, as I said, we have here the Artico seats, which are a little bit softer than the animal skin leather. The sport seats with the microfiber are also very good. The microfiber surface is maybe a little bit better than as well, because I feel that the BMW iX3 high-grade leather red, that is a step more in the quality. It's even a little bit softer than this one here, you know. And so probably for the GLC, I would go with the microfiber seat as the sport seat. It also keeps you, in the top part a little bit, more enclosed in the shoulder area. But the sitting area, that is more or less the same from the seating depth. So you can go with both. There's actually no problem. The biggest driving difference between iX3 and this one here is definitely the air suspension, because you have this, when you have these waves in the road, like here, in the city surrounding, it just evens it out in this typical air suspension way, and that is really interesting. Driving modes, I'm glad to have this button still and can also click that through. I don't have to confirm it in the screen. And then in the sport mode, the air suspension is a little bit stiffer. I also have more resistance from the steering wheel. The steering itself has a good grip. Here also with the vegan surface then in this case, which appears a little bit matte. It's not that as greasy as the animal skin could, become after a while. But if you step in this vehicle, no one could tell actually a difference from the feeling so far. And the steering itself, how it reacts, is really precise. I like that. And don't have no dead zone area. And some more feedback here in the sport mode. Let's check it again. Comfort mode. Yeah. In the comfort mode, steering is lighter. In the sport mode, it gets then a little bit more resistance. And, of course, you maybe know my favorite settings. Individual mode, more resistance in the steering, but suspension here, the air suspension, still kept at the comfort level. That is the setup I really like, I really prefer. So this vehicle gives you a very calm feeling while driving, and if you compare it to the GLC combustion engine, I mean, you know that here on our channel, we have always taken a viewer-based, neutral, technology open view to all different drivetrains and presenting like this might be the best solution for, you know, this use case and this use case and so on. But just from the driving, you really have to say this one drives better than the GLC combustion engine. And this is a tough thing to say because the GLC combustion engine is an SUV which is top-notch in driving already. But this one here adds another level of calmness and sophistication. And from the technology, yes, you have the extra weight, and that might play a role then when you have like super tight corners or something like that. But the center of gravity is low, and it feels so calm, refined, and sophisticated. It's just really great. Here, by the way, we can test something. Let's go to sport mode, and then we can accelerate here because it shows here 90, and then let's go here from like 40 to 90. Let's go. What? No way. I mean, it was even slightly uphill. And that is also this two-speed system. So you have first gear and second gear, although it's an electric vehicle. And when you do 0 to 100, it stays in that first gear. Usually it would switch to the second gear like 70 kilometers an hour. But if you do like the full acceleration, it keeps the first gear longer. At the same time, you can use the second gear at higher speeds and then have efficiency gains, you know, from this kind of transmission. Wow. And I mean, this is here 4.3 seconds in the acceleration figure, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour. One electric motor in the front, one in the rear. A beautiful dolphin statue, or you call it statue. Beautiful design of the roundabout. Spring. Dolphin spring. So 4.3 seconds, and remember the BMW fountain. Yeah, right. Spring is like where the water originally comes from. A dolphin fountain roundabout design. Let's take it that way. So back to the acceleration, 4.3 seconds. The BMW iX3 is at 4.9 seconds. And I mean, sub 5 seconds in the acceleration figure is still fine. You know, everyone can use that. Totally okay. Going back to the comfort mode here. However, here, really explosive power, although this is not like an AMG version. What's the AMG version supposed to be of this one here? So really quick due to this transmission system. This is the advantages of the GLC EQ here in comparison to the iX3: air suspension and also quicker acceleration. Yet again, the battery of the iX3 is 14 kilowatt hours larger and supposed to have then better range. But of course, it always also depends on the efficiency. And we drive this car here today more and more to find out more about a realistic real-world value, and especially when we go to the motorway soon. Here, by the way, also easing in and out of the roundabout. Such a pleasant drive, you know, it's so calm, refined, sophisticated. So this is really next level. At the same time, you sit upright. If you, for example, compare it to a Mercedes CLA, if you think, well, hey, I'd rather go like electric sedan, especially like tall people. I mean, Jonas is one of the rare people that's even taller than me. So, but he also sits in a very comfortable way. Although you always think about like, where are his legs supposed to go? You know, like they. Yeah, but I think that's what I read. Oh, the tuk-tuk company or what is that? So enjoying the drive here, and I'm looking forward even more to go to the motorway. But you really have to ask, like, I mean, what else can you do? You know, so the level of sophistication here is really good, and I mean, I can't say anything more positive about this ride, because there's probably everything said which is positive, you know, but at least like here from the city and the countryside surrounding and so on. Let's see about the recuperation here. very smooth. Everything is done with recuperation. You don't need the friction brakes actually at all. See, no, you don't go to a B mode with pulling this one down or something, but you can hear, whoa, yeah, use the pedals, strong recuperation, normal, no recuperation, and intelligent recuperation. What is this here? For example, it's almost like a cruise control without using the cruise control. Here, the speed is being reduced when the car is in front of me, but when the car goes away, that was not scripted, then when I'm off the throttle, then the car is just rolling. And that is, on the one hand, a good thing. On the other hand, for me personally, for example, I rather like this predictive approach of a vehicle. Means that the car always does the exact very same thing in every moment. And then I rather rely on a fixed recuperation setting, or maybe no, or just a small, normal one. And then I know, hey, it always recuperates in the very same fashion. And you can argue for both systems. It just depends on what you actually prefer then to have as a setting, because efficiency-wise, it makes no difference. When you're on the brake pedal, it will first use the recuperation, and then only if needed, in super harsh braking, then it will actually apply the friction brakes. So, wow, really impressed with the driving here. Also, it has, I think one more level also of sophistication in comparison to this MMA, the CLA platform. I mean, it needs to be some kind of difference. So this is a perfect SUV to drive and doesn't take away anything from the BMW iX3. It feels sportier in the drive, definitely, more direct, and might be a little bit less of the difference when you pick the base suspension here for the GLC EQ, but here with the air suspension, a little bit floatier ride. 20-inch wheels are also a good choice, let's say, in the middle. So both, from driving BMW iX3 and GLC EQ, they are both excellent. So great news that Germany, also here in the EV segment, finally has really striking products again. Can't say it otherwise. But now, even more looking forward to how does this one perform at higher speeds on the motorway. And now the motorway, sport mode and 62-120. Let's go! Nope, that's it. Can't believe that. I mean, this is not an AMG version, but you easily get a Mercedes and an AMG in one with this SUV. This is crazy. Really crazy. And how quick that acceleration was. Here then the sport mode, once again, more resistant in the steering wheel and in the suspension. But of course, for longer way, motorway driving, might as well stick to the comfort mode. This is now a really rough tarmac here. Also good test for the rolling noise and so on, but cannot really compare it to other roads. I mean, you see how effed up this road here is on this. I said effed up and then Mercedes. Voice assistant response. That's weirdo. So I think we have to accelerate here out, then they can go on the motorway. Wow, I mean, this is so quickly done. Really crazy stuff, man. And the air suspension, once again, here also, when you have these longer waves on the motorway, gives you so much confidence and comfort. Of course, you might say, hey, you don't want this like waving effect, then you can also put it a little bit stiffer then. Or might as well say, hey, I want to save the money and go for the base suspension. Here, lane change, easily done. So, wow, such a great ride. And yes, the tarmac here is very rough at this moment. That's why most of the noise comes from that. But from the wind noise, from the insulation, very silent again. And it was very interesting because Jonas just, off camera just told me like, wow, he also realized how silent the car is. And he said like, Thomas, isn't that on the niveau of a Rolls Royce? And that's something to say, when the cameraman says that. And I really have to agree, like when we were driving through the city surroundings, it's so extremely silent and refined. That's really something indeed. So great motorway vehicle here also from the comfort. Yeah, the only thing is that the seating company, the iX3, is a little bit better. Here then you have the more sophisticated suspension options, so whatever you prefer. And let's also check out the assisted systems. So we can switch between limiter or the really sophisticated cruise control. Keeps the speed. Now it's also keeping the lane. And let's see, we should also be able to introduce here this automated or semi-automated lane change. Yes, I have to hold on to the steering wheel. So, and this is done then by the vehicle, this lane change here. Yeah, the only thing is a little bit tough here is really the tarmac. This is one of the loudest motorway tarmac I have heard, so don't be mistaken when you think now it's loud on the camera. It's a super silent car on the motorway, definitely. It's just that this is one of the worst motorway tarmacs I've experienced. Now here, automated lane change back. No, doesn't want to do it. There we go. So, yeah. And that's also smoothly done. Then we have a blind spot monitor here in the side mirrors. This crazy tarmac here. And there's a red triangle there in the side mirror. So also sophisticated as for the assistance systems. I would maybe say that the iX3 goes a little bit step above that even on the assistance systems. There you can also have this this hands-free on the motorway. It's still level 2, but you can do it hands-free, and the car is also doing the lane changes completely autonomously. So there the iX3 sets another level of smoothness even on top. Also very interesting to have that. But definitely also very good from the suspension on the motorway, especially considering how destroyed it is. Maybe we should switch to the other side. That looks a little bit better there, so we can get off here and then go to the other side of the motorway and and repeat that once again. Yeah, going off here also in a dynamic way. It feels really nice. Let's do it sport mode once again here with these air suspension. A little bit tighter than in the dampening. This can also go, by the way, a little bit lower on the motorway to increase efficiency. Also works. Wow. And then as soon as you have good tarmac, you feel again how silent and refined that car actually is. Also good how it stays very upright in the corners. So it can feel sporty, but it feels comfortable at the very same time. And what I want to do as well is to even out the consumption just on motorway and then test like 100 and 120 kilometers an hour and give you the results of that one later, because that's also something we have been looking forward to so much. And now, pricing, consumption, real-world range, and my final so far verdict, Mercedes GLC EV versus the BMW iX3. So first of all, as for the consumption, we did today a test of motorway going back and forth, that we have like the equal topography. I tried to do a lot of 120 kilometers an hour, like 70 miles an hour, but of course with then switching the motorway, and sometimes there's a little bit traffic and so on. You cannot always keep like 120 constant, but an overall average of a little bit something over 100 kilometers an hour, between 100 kilometers an hour, 110 kilometers an hour, 60, 65 miles an hour, which is a realistic motorway speed for most countries. And dry conditions, not too warm today, but not too cold, no rain, a little bit wind, and the tarmac rather rough. There are always so many variables, that's why it's always hard to one-to-one compare. But there, in this case, then we scored some 23 kilowatt hours on 1 kilometers. That's 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour. Can be a little bit better, indeed, got to say that. We have to test, of course, different situations. And if you had more city share in it, of course, it was a little bit lower. So like 2 to 3 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometer lower when you not only had the motorway share. But that would mean for this motorway realistic real-world range, which we try to do similar with all EVs, would mean that you go a little bit further than 400 kilometers or 250 miles. If you have some lower motorway speed, or if you have more city share with this big battery here, smaller one later to come, and rear-wheel drive and so on, you can also get some 500 kilometers or 300 miles. However, if we now compare the BMW iX3 to that, as for the range, there we scored some 20 kilowatt hours, so some 3 miles per kilowatt hour in the rain, also at a similar speed. And that would mean some 450 kilometers of real-world range for the BMW iX3, because it also has a bigger battery, so some 330 miles. So indeed, since, as for the efficiency and the bigger battery, the BMW iX3 will come probably, a little bit more than 100 kilometers, maybe like up to 140 kilometers, 60, 65, 70 miles further than the GLC here. The battery is not the biggest one for this SUV, gotta say that. But then, of course, we have the other advantages, soon more to that when we go to the final comparison, GLC versus iX3. Gotta say about this one, although, it's not especially high consumption, so you will be fine with that. And you have also like the extras like air suspension and rear exit steering, which makes this car like a great drive. It drives so extremely well. It's silent on the interior, very well insulated, so smooth to drive. It's one of the best cars Mercedes has ever built from a modern perspective. There are, of course, all-time classics like 126 S-Class, for example, like this, which is one of the best Mercedes ever built overall, probably. But this one is probably at this moment one of the best Mercedes from their overall portfolio and one of the best SUVs overall out there. Can definitely say that. Maybe then there's someone better, but let's see more about that very soon. Then about the pricing. So this one starts just over 70,000 euros with this battery here. Then when you go like a well-spec car, 80,000 as it stands here right now, and this is not even full spec, 87,000 euros gross. And you can also spec one with even more extras to 95,000 euros. Not necessary though, but definitely not a cheap car. And the leasing rates will be probably also, like 1% of the gross price, approximately something like that at this moment. But we'll see also how it will score then on the market. But overall, it is a very good offer for an electric SUV, no doubt about that. Yeah, and then when you think about this iX3 comparison, so this one has the more comfortable suspension. The seats are more comfortable in the iX3, even softer material and better, like wider, better cushioning, more seating depth in the lower seatbelt area. This one, however, with the air suspension, more comfortable in the suspension-wise. Rear exit steering, important for European cities where it gets tighter. And when you maneuver around and so on, the rear exit steering helps massively, definitely. Base suspension, where the base suspension would also be a very good comparison, definitely. Yeah, and then of course the thing is that the iX3 just comes a little bit longer in the range and is also a little bit cheaper. So this is a fantastic vehicle. The BMW iX3 is the only big problem for the GLC EQ because that is also so good. That is basically probably the only car that can beat this one at this moment. But definitely what had to become clear, because I was so happy with driving this one and it drives even better than the combustion engine GLC, which is already a fantastic car. These two vehicles, GLC EQ and the BMW iX3, are really the top hitters here from the German automotive industry again. Fantastic SUVs, one of the best SUVs overall, both together at this moment. So no matter what you decide for, if you like the one or the other better from the looks, you won't regret it. Both cars are absolutely excellent. And this was also like a very, very good performance from this one here today. And I hope we could, maybe fill you in with all the details you really need to know. If there's anything left you want to know here from the GLC EV and its competitors, tell us in the comments. Tell me, what do you think about this vehicle here? Looking so much forward to your feedback. And now compare the BMW iX3. And there's recently also revealed the i3, the sedan brother, which will probably also have something similar from Mercedes very soon.